So SpaceX IPO has happened. That was one of the should we be talking
Yes.
about that now
Let's
or?
do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Um, they got fully sold. Stock shot up from there from the IPO price. It's up how many percent did you say? I thought it was up more
Roughly
than that.
20.
I guess
Well, it
135,
oh, if it's I think this, Savvy's basing it off of it looks like 150.
which would have been probably the first trade. So the
Yeah,
cheapest you could have probably bought it for would have been 150 on the open market, as opposed if you didn't get any IPO shares.
yeah,
But if you got IPO shares, then you're up further than the 20 something percent. What is it? 26%.
26.
But if you bought
Yeah,
it immediately when it was available to buy, you're probably up 26% still, if you held on to it. But
right.
so this is one of those things where it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen with the stock. Like, and what's fascinating about SpaceX is that I now have had so many people ask me about SpaceX who don't normally invest in stocks, which is one of those times when like when the wrong people are asking you about a particular, about Bitcoin or whatever.
Yeah,
It might be a time that things might
to
have been
sell.
overhyped or whatever.
Yeah,
So this is oftentimes compared to, what if you had bought, Amazon at IPO, everybody thought it was overvalued, or Nvidia at IPO when everybody thought it was overvalued, and everybody thinks SpaceX is overvalued, and I'm going to go ahead and buy it at IPO anyway. Well, the difference is that when like Amazon IPO'd, it IPO'd at roughly $400 million market cap. And at the time, so the largest companies on the public market were valued at 150 billion-dollar market cap. So there was a huge delta between where Amazon IPO'd and the largest companies in the world, right? There was over 300-400 time delta. Um, and with SpaceX, it's IPOing at roughly $2 trillion. The largest company in the world is Nvidia, which some people think is overvalued at 5 trillion. It's only 2.5 times larger. The largest company in the world is only 2.5 times larger. So SpaceX, and by the way, it's the 2 trillion actually starts to compare once you get into the trillions in terms of market cap. It starts to compare to the GDP. Like the GDP is only
right.
the entire spending of the entire country is only in the 30-ish trillion-dollar range. So once you start comparing to that number, things can't really go over a certain amount, or the entire market cap of all of the companies combined in the stock market is roughly, in the $60 trillion uh, range, right? So again, you're already comparing size-wise to the entirety of the market. So SpaceX does not have the ability to run 100 times, for example, in the same way that Amazon has ran over 1,000 times, right? So those things are not comparable. Can SpaceX go up and double from here or triple from here? Yes, over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. It could even go up further than that. But having a similar sort of return as if you had gotten in at the IPO prices of Nvidia or Amazon when people thought those companies were overvalued, this is not going to have similar results. Just putting those things out there, even that's almost like definitively true, unless we have this massive inflationary event that occurs that causes the dollar to basically be worthless, in which case everything will skyrocket in price.
Everything will inflate.
Um,
Yeah,
right. So it would be hard for it to have a higher value than the entire market cap of all companies combined. So, just a little caveat there for SpaceX, little
and
asterisk.
what do you so in this week's news, they acquired Cursor. I think it came out in April that they were doing a deal with Cursor that gave them the option to acquire them, but like
Yeah,
it was for a while from now, and they ended up executing much earlier.
yeah,
Do you think that's a smart move on their part, or does it
absolutely.
make sense?
It's a brilliant move. First of all, they were struggling with their with their own AI efforts with Grok and having Grok have any coding skills whatsoever. So um, that was like basically lagging behind quite a bit. Cursor had the opposite problem where they actually had pretty good access to code, but they didn't have enough access to data center capacity and AI chips. And they can now use Colossus, SpaceX's AI data centers for training purposes. And they have, Cursor being focused on code is going to be able to utilize that data center availability significantly to make their own product better. And their revenues are going to flow through XAI and therefore SpaceX. So that's a brilliant purchase, in my opinion. And then to be able to purchase it, instead of looking at it as like, oh, wow, $60 billion is really expensive for Cursor, if you look at it from the lens of, well, 60 billion is only 3% of the cost or of the market cap of SpaceX, well, then it's extremely cheap. They
Yeah.
100% should be doing this deal for 60
I mean,
billion, or even, even if they paid 100 billion, it would have been worth it because it's an all stock deal. And therefore they're only giving up 3% dilution to gain this Cursor asset, which is worth significantly more than 3% in my view. So
and to put that 3% move more into focus, SpaceX dropped 5% today. So they
right,
dropped more than the Cursor deal
right,
is going to
exactly,
cost them
exactly.
in just one day. So
Yeah.
you're totally right. It's a nothing acquisition for them. Some thoughts I have.
Nothing from a cost perspective, but it will add
Right.
significantly from an asset
Yes.
perspective.
Yes. Some thoughts I have going into it is, one, Cursor has their model called Composer, and obviously SpaceX has Grok. So I'm interested to see if they end up merging the two or if they maintain two different models. I would assume they're going to bring them together at some point.
Together.
Um, and then I hope, and I think that right now the way Cursor works is you could use pretty much any model you want within Cursor, and I hope they leave it that way and they don't force you to use Grok or Composer or whatever they're going to go with. Because if they do, they're going to have a lot of people leave in Exodus. But
Right.
again, I just
I
don't see
don't I don't
them.
think they're gonna do that.
Yeah, I don't see them doing that. Which leads me
The
to my
the
other point. Or yeah, what were you
Well,
going to say?
the smart thing to do, and I suspect this is exactly what Elon is already planning on doing, is to make Cursor as good as the best models that are already out there, like Opus or whatever,
Yeah.
and then just make it significantly cheaper. And then you would be, as a Cursor user, you would be inclined to just use the cheaper model that does just as good or maybe even better, because Cursor does have access to a lot of code. People are using it to write code. And I suspect part of the terms of agreement with Cursor is probably that it can use your code to train better models. And therefore, their access to code is pretty significant, probably much
So
greater than most.
this is what I think is the interesting part, is not only in theory can they train the models on what you're coding or programming, they could train the models on what you are with the prompt you are sending to Opus and then what Opus is returning back, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
at scale.
that's a great point.
So they could see what all of these models, how all of them work. Um,
That's a
so
great
I
point.
think there's a very interesting opportunity here. Again, to your point, I don't know what's in the user agreement, what they can and can't do. I don't know if that's going to stop them necessarily. But
Yeah,
I do expect Grok or Composer to become significantly better
yeah.
than these other models. You know,
Yeah,
if
so
they
I,
can
I
really
think
nail down the
that
training.
that was a great purchase for SpaceX. I mean, we already kind of knew it was probably going to happen, even pre-IPO, as they had announced a deal back in April, that they had the option to buy them, and they had made a significant investment in them. But yeah, so in my view, this makes SpaceX more attractive, or like valued more than it would be the day before they made this deal.
I
And in
agree.
fact, at the $2 trillion valuation, they should try to buy as many things as possible. And
While they
if they
can.
can get, yeah, and if they can get Tesla, for right now, even if they paid a 10%, 15% premium for Tesla, they could get it for roughly 1.6, 1.7 trillion. So, you know, they could get it for about 45, less than a 50% dilution, and quadruple their revenue. Right. So, and of course, there's like synergies that would happen with Tesla. So this might be a, so the plan all along anyway. But
Right.
this one of the thoughts that I had is that Elon has way more shares of SpaceX than he does of Tesla. Not to mention, SpaceX has the super voting shares as opposed to Tesla shares, which are just common stock. So with Tesla, he currently only has like under 15% voting power. With SpaceX, he has 80% voting power. He
Wow.
owns 40% of the company, something along those lines. So, with SpaceX being valued more and more, and Tesla ideally being valued less and less relative to SpaceX, that ratio, it's actually to Elon Musk's benefit if they merge, right? Which has been speculated that they'll eventually merge. So the higher the SpaceX valuation, the better it is for Elon Musk because he gets to maintain control with super voting shares of SpaceX, which is what his shares are. Uh, and he could, post merger, he could even sell a significant chunk of his SpaceX and still have super majority share. So, uh, super fascinating thing to watch there.
It
But
also
it's
it
ki- it's
makes
it's also kind of interesting. He also hasn't been pumping Tesla in the way he normally does. So he's now just pumping SpaceX for the past few months.
Right. It also, makes sense for SpaceX to acquire Tesla because they now own Grok, and Tesla is more and more focused on robotics, where Grok is going to be more critical. So, it's not like it's a space company acquiring a car company. It's
Right.
a AI company acquiring a robotics company.
Right, right. Well, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that Elon said, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, is that he didn't want to do all the AI stuff under Tesla if he wasn't going to control Tesla, and that was part of his reason for asking for such high compensation. But he ended up sort of like doing them not under Tesla anyway. And his excuse for that was because, well, the talent was going to leave this giant company and go elsewhere and do these things on their own, kind of like the AI startups were doing. So to retain the talent, again, these were Elon's explanations. To retain the talent, he created XAI as a separate entity that then recruited the talent to do AI related work, but then later merged that with X, which was Twitter, and then merged all of those with SpaceX. And now all of it is under this massive company again, which is probably going to, merge with Tesla. And he will have that control that he essentially wanted and was complaining about, that he wouldn't do the AI stuff under Tesla if he wasn't going to have control. So ultimately, he got to his goal, or he will get to his goal once that merger happens. Um, and all the AI stuff is under his exact control. Like his super majority voting power makes sure that Elon has full control over everything.